Friends, we need to stop the liberal Bloc Québécois bill that criminalizes faith. Mark Carney's Liberals have struck a backroom deal with the Bloc Québécois to strip the religious belief exemption out of Canada's hate speech laws, the one remaining protection stopping the government from criminalizing ordinary Christian, Jewish, and other religious teaching. They're doing it through Bill C9. They're carving out existing hate speech exemptions for people with sincerely held religious beliefs. Now, consider what the Liberals think is hate speech here. Misgendering, dead naming, orthodox views on sex and gender roles within the family, thinking life begins at conception. The Liberals, though, they know the unintended consequences here because those consequences are not unintended at all. They're doing it deliberately, and they're doing it to the very people they already treat as political enemies. This isn't about safety. It's not about hate. This is about silencing faith when it opposes the Liberal Party's values. Visit protectreligiousfreedom.ca to send a message today that religious freedom is a Canadian value. And let's remember, they incited hatred against us. Now they want to silence us.
Large American online platforms have become seas of racism, misogyny, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and hate in all its forms. And they're being used by criminals to harm our children.
It was this Liberal government that amplified an unverified mass graves story in Kamloops, BC, before a single body was ever found.
Vandalism and arson are being seen across the country, including against Catholic churches. One of my reflections is I understand the anger that's out there against the federal government, against institutions like the Catholic Church. It is real and it is fully understandable given the shameful history that we're all becoming more and more aware of and engaging ourselves to do better.
Their rhetoric poured gasoline on a national firestorm, and the result? More than 100 churches across Canada were burned or vandalized, many of them Indigenous built, Indigenous attended, and central to the communities Ottawa pretends to care about. And what did this government do? They looked away, they excused it, they enabled it, and now they want to criminalize our prayers. These are the same politicians who refused to defend our churches while they burned. Today they want to criminalize the beliefs practiced inside those same churches. Speak about unborn life? Criminal. Speak about protecting children from cross-sex hormones? Criminal. Speak scripture plainly? Criminal. They ignored these arsons, but now they're outraged by the doctrine. And if you think I'm overreacting, Mark Miller, the Liberal MP who was just reappointed to cabinet as the arbiter of Canadian culture, wants clergy jailed for quoting scripture.
If someone were literally invoking a passage from, in this case, the Bible, but there are other religious texts that say the same thing, and somehow say that this is good faith. I mean, clearly there are situations in these texts where these statements are hateful. They should not be used to invoke or be a defense, and there should perhaps be discretion for prosecutors to press charges. I just want to understand what your notion of good faith is in this context, where there are clearly passages in religious texts that are clearly hateful.
These people ignored the real extremists, but they're going to prosecute the church ladies. Every week in Montreal, Hamas-aligned radicals swarm the steps of the cathedral, chanting, waving terror symbols, blocking parishioners, turning a house of worship into a stage for intimidation and supremacy. The police stand back, the politicians shrug, and the Liberals in Ottawa, well, they yawn. But what does the Liberal Bloc Coalition identify as the real threat here? I don't know, the Knights of Columbus with their playground building efforts? The Catholic Women's League, those bake sale running, funeral lunch serving criminal masterminds? Instead of dealing with the mobs screaming outside of our cathedrals, the government is criminalizing the people inside of the cathedrals, the volunteers who run coat drives, raising money for wheelchairs, praying the rosary, and caring for the vulnerable. Their crime is simple. They believe unborn children deserve life. They believe kids shouldn't be put on cross-sex hormones. They believe what their faith teaches about sex and gender. And the terrorists block the cathedral, and the government prosecutes the congregation. The problem, as we know, isn't the local Christmas parade. It's the weekly genocidal hate marches from Hamas supporters on the streets of Canadian cities every single week. What's causing this is the Liberals' policy of mass migration of cultural misfits, but addressing that is not politically expedient. In fact, keeping that rolling is key to the Liberals' foreign and domestic policy. Oh, and by the way, the criminal code already covers violence and calls to genocide. Let's be honest. If the Liberals were truly interested in stopping calls to violence or genocide, they could do it today. They could do it yesterday. The criminal code already gives them that power. Sections 319.1, 319.2, and 319.7 spell it out plainly. So what is this really about? It's about creating a political weapon. And with this government's track record, that weapon will be aimed squarely at the very communities they claim to protect. Christians, Jews, Sikhs, parents, and anyone guilty of the ultimate heresy against Ottawa, believing there is a higher moral authority than the government. This reckless assault on freedom won't be used against real extremists. It will be used to silence the faithful. Have we forgotten? This government locked up our pastors. Now they want to do it again. Never forget, during COVID, the same political establishment jailed pastors for the crime of holding worship services. Pastor Artur Pawlowski, Pastor James Coates, Pastor Tim Stevens, Pastor Tobias Tisson, Pastor Phil Hutchins, and others, dragged from their pulpits, handcuffed on highways, thrown into solitary confinement. These people padlocked our churches, they surveilled our congregations, they turned worship into a prosecutable act. If they were willing to imprison our pastors for preaching, what do you think they'll do with new criminal code powers aimed explicitly at religiously motivated speech? They've done it before. They're itching to do it again. This is a targeted attack on Christians and Jews. If Ottawa cared about anti-Semitism, they would just shut down the weekly extremist rallies threatening Jewish communities.
Okay? We will kill you, okay? You f***ing pig.
If they cared about safely, they wouldn't let terror sympathizers occupy the doorways of cathedrals in Montreal. If they cared about hate crimes, they'd condemn the burning of more than 100 churches rather than tiptoe around it. They would deal with mass immigration from culturally incompatible places where extremism is rampant. But instead of punishing extremists, they're punishing Christians who oppose sterilizing children, Jews who teach scripture plainly, parents who refuse government ideology, faith leaders who preach the tenets of their religion peacefully. This bill won't stop hate. It will incite it by criminalizing scripture. You can already be dragged into court over pronouns. Here's what the Ottawa Liberals don't want anyone to connect here. Gender identity is already protected under the Human Rights Code. This means right now, today, your religious belief or conscience can land you before a tribunal if you refuse to use invented pronouns, state biological reality, decline to affirm gender ideology. You can be fined, sanctioned, investigated, and punished. Now the Liberals and the Bloc want to strip the only criminal code protection that shields Christians and Jews and Sikhs when their faith conflicts with government ideology. If you won't lie, if you won't comply, if you won't deny reality, they will criminalize you. Enough. This must be stopped. This is the most aggressive assault on religious freedom in modern Canadian history. Bill C-9 is not a hate speech bill. It's a power-seizing bill. It's a faith-targeting bill. It is a censorship bill, and it must be defeated. If you value free speech, free worship, free thought, now is the time to speak up. Add your voice. Go to protectreligiousfreedom.ca and sign our petition. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. The Liberals and the Bloc Québécois want to strip the only criminal code protection that shields Christians, Jews, and other people of faith when their faith conflicts with government ideology. This has to be stopped. Please go to protectreligiousfreedom.ca and sign our petition.